Well, hello there everybody, welcome back to more Super Robot Wars Original Generations. We've got no time to waste. We gotta get over to that transport and help out Irm's dad before he becomes a Fire Emblem dad. But first, we have a new character and a new mech that are a package deal, so we're gonna go over them right now. It's time now to talk about Maskai Goes, the very first original character created for Super Robot Wars. Yes, debuting all the way back in Super Robot Wars 2, Maskai alongside the Cybuster were the first character and mech introduced into the Banpresto Originals line of characters and mechs. But enough about Maskai's history, it's time to talk about himself as the character. Starting out with his base stats, Maskai has really good melee and range, a little bit more melee than his range stat, but he can use both quite effectively, which is good because the Cybuster uses both melee and ranged attacks. He has 150 skill, that's decent. 115 defense is a little on the low side, but 203 evasion is fantastic. 202 accuracy is also very, very good. Looking at his spirits, Maskai has access to a 10 cost focus, which is of course fantastic, as well as a 10 cost flash, so both of those spirits will be free once you get SP regen on Maskai, or I guess you cannot get an SP regen on Maskai. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Next up on his spirit list, at level 15 he will get luck at a 40 cost. Next he'll get valor at level 26 at a cost of 35, which is a very low cost for valor and quite good. Next up at level 30 he will get Spirit at a 40 cost, and then at level 35 he will get access to Bullseye at an expensive 30 cost. Next up we'll take a look at his abilities. He has at base Infighter level 2 and Counter level 2. Infighter is of course, as I mentioned, a fantastic ability. It's great on Maskai as well, as he has lots of physical attacks, and he also appreciates the extra points of move as well as it levels up, as the Cybuster has high movement already, so even more movement makes the Cybuster very, very, very mobile. Counter helps Maskai out on enemy phase. Maskai is great on enemy phase because the Cybuster has access to long range attacks as well as close range attacks, so he can usually counterattack almost any enemy that's coming after him, and with counter, can get the jump on them, of course, before they even get to attack him on enemy phase. So a great ability set for Maskai, and because he only has 2, he has lots of flexibility on what abilities you want to give him. So that's another great thing about Maskai. We'll now take a look at the Cybuster itself. The Cybuster has solid HP and just okay energy, but the stats that are really impressive on the Cybuster are its own mobility and armor. Having 130 mobility is fantastic, that's one of the most mobile mechs in the game. And 1400 armor is definitely nothing to sneeze at either. The 7 movement is also fantastic, and so the Cybuster can go around really fast, can take a hit as well, but also is very dodgy and makes it a fantastic mech, especially combined with Maskai having only a 10 cost focus, meaning that usually he has an additional 30 avoid alongside his great mobility at base. But if for some reason you need even more mobility and even more movement for the cost of 100 armor, the Cybuster can transform into the Cybird, gaining an additional 10 mobility and 2 points of movement. Looking at the Cybuster's attack, the Cybuster is a super robot, so these are the only attacks it has access to, so you're going to have to make do with these attacks. However, this is plenty. The Cybuster is pretty much set up for almost any situation with its base set of attacks. First up is Caloric Missiles. You're really only going to use this for counterattacking at range if you don't have any use of High Familiar left. 1 to 5 range is just okay. It's got good accuracy, and the 2200 attack is just kind of iffy. Next up is Psy Flash. It's our first access to a map attack. Basically what a map attack does is, depending on the range, it attacks in a cloud around a mech and will attack any enemy that is within that range. So it's a great way to deal a lot of damage and even possibly take out a bunch of enemies with one single action. Now, usually attacks like Psy Flash have a pretty heavy cost, and Psy Flash does take quite a bit of energy, something that you don't have a lot of access to for the Cybuster, but again, a great move that does a lot of great things, and as we saw in the previous map, can take out a whole bunch of enemies if you needed to. Next up is High Familiar. an attack with great range at 1 to 7, 3400 damage. It does have a limited ammo count, but besides that, this is a great attack that she'll be using a lot on enemy phase, and also will be using a lot in the Cybird, but we'll get back to that in just a moment. Next up is Disc Cutter. Only one range is a little unfortunate, but it makes up for that with great damage and 0 cost, meaning that it's a very spammable attack and is going to be your best bet with the Cybuster when you start off maps, as again, it doesn't have a will requirement either. Akashic Buster is your best melee attack that you have access to. 1 to 3 range is fantastic, however, as you can see on screen, it has a 120 will requirement. It's kind of spammable at 30 cost, but with limited energy that the Cybuster has, especially at base, you're not going to be able to do that. That's why I suggest once you get the Cybuster to heavily invest into its energy so that you can spam Akashic Buster as much as possible. Finally is Cosmo Nova, and this is basically Masaki's best nuke option and one of its best attacks in general. While it is a range attack, so you won't be able to use Infighter with it, at 6200 base damage and 1 to 6 range, it's fantastic. It does have a heavy will requirement at, I believe, 140, and then also you can only use this once without getting resupplied, as it only has a 1 ammo count. But it's a great attack and is great to use if you really need to delete an enemy and deal as much damage as possible with the Cybuster. If you're using the Cybird to get some movement, you do have a little less access to attacks as you go down to only Caloric Missile, Psyflash, and High Familiar. Damage doesn't change, ranges do though. Caloric Missile becomes much more useful at 1 to 7 range, doesn't have post move yet, but on the flip side, High Familiar gains post move, loses a little bit of range, but is your best attacking option when you're in the Cybird form for moving in and trying to take on some enemies while in the Cybird form. But the main goal when you're in the Cybird is to dodge enemies and get in close so that you can mess them up with the Cybuster afterwards. So after going over all the basic parts of the Cybuster and Masaki, it's pretty obvious that the Cybuster is a cut above the rest in comparison to all the mechs that we've seen so far. We are going to get a mech in a very short order that is going to be similar to the Cybuster, but the Cybuster does pretty much nothing wrong, which is an incredibly rare thing in Super Robot Wars, especially OG. The Cybuster isn't a traditional super robot, as it's nowhere near as bulky, has nowhere near as much HP, but it still hits as hard as a super robot, and while yes, it doesn't take as many hits as a super robot, it's going to dodge most attacks anyway, especially if it's in the Cybird form, which makes it incredibly versatile. Basically, this thing is borderline untouchable with enough upgrades and parts and just Masaki in general using focus, which again, at a 10 cost means that you can use it every turn once you get SP regen for 0 cost effectively, and so that combination of things is part of what makes Masaki so good. Masaki also has Infighter at base, which means that will level up on its own, so you can immediately focus Masaki on getting attack or SP regen, whichever one you prefer to get first. Like I mentioned, you can also do whatever you want with Masaki's skill lineup because he has 5 open slots. So you can get him attacker and SP regen, and then you've got open area to do whatever you want with. You can go with revenge plus counter to make him really good on enemy phase. You could also go with potential to make him even more deadly if he happens to take some damage and have even better evasion, more crit, more damage, just make him even more of an absolute beast. And by potential with revenge and counter, you could give him assist attack. There's lots of different things you can do with Masaki, and another strength of Masaki and the Cybuster is that they can do pretty much anything you need them to do. With their high movement, they can get in quick and start wrecking enemies. With high damage and great spirits, the Cybuster can be great at taking on big bosses and bigger enemies. And with the map attack, the Cybuster can also just wipe out a whole group of enemies. And so, lots of super robots are very similar to Cybuster, but they're not to the complete effect of how much Cybuster can do. Again, the great movement, the great damage, the map attack. There's just so many things that Cybuster does that a lot of other mechs can't even touch, or most other mechs can only do 1 or 2 of those things. And so the complete combination between Masaki and his great spirit lineup and the Cybuster and how deadly and effective of a mech it can be makes it an absolute dream of a mech to use, and especially early game here on Ryusei route, this thing tears up. the weak enemies that the DC throws at you. And you'll see it on this map, you'll see it on future maps. The Cybuster is easily one of the MVPs of Ryusei route and will keep up throughout the entire game. This is 100% a top 5 mech, and of course Masaki in the Cybuster is a top 5 character. And so do not sleep on the Cybuster. The more you invest in the Cybuster, the better it gets. The same with Masaki. The quicker you get him SP regen, the more deadlier he gets. Once he gets attacker, now he deals even more damage once he gets to 130 will. You give him revenge, then he deals so much damage on enemy phase with attacker and revenge together. And so I could go on for days about how good Cybuster is. Never bench this thing the absolute second you get Cybuster. Invest a lot of money into it, give it great parts, give it all sorts of things to make it better, because the Cybuster at base is one of the best mechs in the game, and with proper investment can become the best mech in the game. So to start off this scenario, we are going to transform into the Cybird and head first right into the middle of the enemies and start taking them out. We are also going to try to get Irm to the transport as quick as possible without dying, of course, so I put up a flash as well. Hopefully most of the enemies will go after Masaki though, and that's the main thing you're going to want to do, is have them be aggroed onto Masaki. Don't want to have Irm fight at all in that plane.
Cybuster! バーカ、もっとよく狙いな。お返しだぜ。いけ、カロリックミサイル。バグで当たれて調子に乗るなよ。
For turn 2 here, we continue to send Irm forward while Masaki needs to clear a path for him. I changed the Cybird back into the Cybuster in order to deal more damage and give us more options for attacking as well.
風の魔装鬼神の力を見せてやる。オラオラオラオラ、くそ、期待を発揮する。しっかり捕まってろよ。
わかったな。
頼んだぜクロ、シュン。
オイラたちに任せときにゃって。行くにゃっちゃ。
なんだと。
For the beginning of turn 3, we will take out that front plane so Irm can move right to the transport, and I believe turn 3 is the absolute earliest possible opportunity to get there. You want to do that, of course, as quick as possible, as it's very important to do so. You'll get a great mech out of it.
今さら慌てても遅いぜ。天に二つのマガツ星。その名も系統画号剣。暗剣殺。
And now it's time to look at the hyper fighter, the Grungust. The Grungust is the stereotypical super robot. While Cybuster has the attacks and some of the stats of a super robot, the Grungust truly is a very stereotypical super robot. Its high 7,000 HP and 230 energy is fantastic, alongside its 1,800 armor, make it an absolute beast. Its 85 mobility is not great, but you're not probably going to be planning on dodging many attacks with the Grungust as is. Now this is the base form of the Grungust, and it is the all-terrain version. It's got quad A's in air, ground, water, and space for its terrain bonuses, but as you can see, like all of the previous mechs we seem to have discussed over the last little bit, it can transform. We're going to go over those forms in a bit because all the forms have very different attacks, so we're going to talk about the base form of the Grungust because this is the best form and the form you're going to be using most often, and then the other two forms are much more niche and used for specific situations. So we'll now go over the base form of the Grungust's attacks. It's got 4 attacks. First up is Boost Knuckle, a post move 1 to 3 range attack with solid damage, and also is completely free. You can spam Boost Knuckle to your heart's content as it has no energy cost, no ammo cost, a great attack, great to use to start out, as it of course also doesn't have any will requirement. Final Beam is a pretty niche attack. It is an all attack, but being only 1 range means that it's pretty limited in that effect, but it does deal a little bit more damage. It's also a little expensive on the energy side, especially in comparison to Boost Knuckle, but is a solid attack to use at base as well. Next up is Ketarahu's Sword. While it has the same range as Boost Knuckle, it has far better damage and also a little bit more crit, and is going to cost you a little bit more on the energy side, but not a whole lot more, about the same as Final Beam. So this is a great attack to use as well once you get the will to use it. I believe it's a 110 will attack, so you're going to have to wait a little bit to use it, but a great attack to use once you need to take down some more strong enemies. Next up we have Calamity Slash, and this is very much the finishing move of the Grungust. Only 1 range, but 5650 damage. That is fantastic. The only thing that outdamages the Grungust Calamity Slash right now is Cosmonova, but unlike Cosmonova, this thing has an energy cost, so that means you can use it quite a bit more than the 1 ammo of Cosmonova. So this is one of your best things to invest in the Grungust, because this is your boss killer. This deals huge damage and is very important for upcoming maps and for taking on big bad bosses that you're going to run into. So a great attack. Invest heavily in this, but invest heavily in all of the Grungust's attacks because they all have great uses. The one thing about the base form Grungust that isn't great is the fact that it has very limited range. You're basically only locked to 1 to 3 range unless you give upgrades to whatever pilot you have in terms of using Gunfighter or using additional parts to make up for that range issue. But overall, the Grungust actually likes taking damage, especially if you have Irm in the mech, so while you aren't going to be able to counterattack from very long range, but if you close the distance, well, not very many mechs are going to be able to survive a fight with the Grungust that easily. But if you need help closing the distance, the Wind Gust is one of your best options to do so. While you lose a little bit of HP, you do gain a bit of mobility, not a lot to make it different, but the main thing is you gain an additional 2 points of movement. Also the ability to fly, making it so that the Wind Gust can soar over troublesome terrain and get up close and battle enemies very easily. So often you will use this form at the beginning of battles so that you can get in and get closer to the enemies a lot quicker with that additional 2 points of movement. Attacks wise, the Wind Gust does make up for the range issues of the base Grungust, with Double Omega Laser being 1 to 4 range in post move, Big Missile being 1 to 6 range, and they do give up a little bit in damage, but are great attacks to counter those enemies that are trying to outrange you. Spiral Attack is only 1 range, but is a useful attack to use if enemies get up close to the Wind Gust and you want to hit them back for major damage when you're not in the main form of the Grungust. The final form to talk about is the Gust Lander. The more defensive form, it gains an additional bit of armor as well, giving up a little bit more mobility, but who cares. 1 extra point of movement over the base Grungust. It also has an S on the ground, so some utility there, and it moves far better in the water than the base Grungust. But overall, the Gust Lander isn't super useful in comparison to the base Grungust, other than having some better ranged attacks, which we'll go over right now. It shares Big Missile with the Wing Gust, and then has Omega Cannon, which has really great range at 3 to 8 range. 3100 damage is also not bad. And finally, Drill Attack, which has great range as well at 1 to 4, is Pulse Move, and deals some pretty good damage as well. The only issue with the Gust Lander, and why I very rarely use it, is because it's a ground-focused form, but the Grungust space form is a good ground-focused form as well, and out-damages it. Sure, it doesn't outrange it, but I often don't use this other than if I really want to have something battle in the water, because the Gust Lander is the best water form of this mech, but also the Grungust can probably out-damage it with Ketarahu's sword, so the Gust Lander doesn't have a whole lot of utility. I very rarely use it, but maybe there's some uses of it that I'm just not thinking of right now, or if you really like using it for its extra defense, could be useful for that as well, or hiding in the water. I personally, again, am not going to be using the Gust Lander much, but there is a lot of utility with the Gust Lander in all of the Grungust forms, and that kind of gets back to my main point about the Grungust. This is your first super robot that anybody can pilot. The Cybuster is locked to Masaki, and also this is the only super robot that you have access to until the route merge, so it would be a shame if this wasn't a good mech. However, the Grungust is fantastic. In its base form, it deals so much damage, especially with Calamity Slash, and so it's going to be your big damage dealer against bosses. It takes hits extraordinarily well in almost all forms, especially the Gust Lander, but the base Grungust can take most attacks that you're going to run into right now anyway. And because it's a low mobility mech, a lot of enemies like to attack your characters that don't have great mobility so that they can hit them. They're not going to be doing a lot of damage to the Grungust, but that's just something I find they love to do. So if you can get the Grungust in and get enemies to start attacking it, then the Grungust can just start annihilating enemies, and it's so good at that. This thing can snowball so easily, and with the right pilot, this thing just destroys enemies. Irm is a fantastic user of the Grungust. Not only does his personality type of being easygoing mean that every time he gets hit, he gains so much will, but also if he misses with the lower accuracy of some of these attacks, then he doesn't care. He gains even more will. Basically, Irm can never have a bad turn in the Grungust, and that's fantastic. Irm, once he gains access to his ace bonus and has a really cheap love, means that he can absolutely destroy enemies by using Calamity Slash and Love and spamming it turn after turn, and be able to take on lots of bosses and actually hit bosses more than once with an all-out attack. And so I'm going to keep Irm in the Grungust throughout the entire game because I think he's just one of, if not the best pilot for it. There are lots of other characters that can do well in the Grungust. I actually don't think anybody could do bad in the Grungust just because of how much damage it deals and the fact that it's basically a safety net with how good its armor is. You could put Ryusei in this thing and use his great melee and do great things there. You know, you could also put Gyata in it if you want to waste the Grungust, but his great defense could help and he has great melee there as well. Ingram could be a great user of the Grungust because if you want to feed him boss kills, giving him the boss killing mech is probably one of the best ideas to do that. So the Grungust is one of the best mechs in the game. A lot of characters in the game would love to use the Grungust, and I think there's a lot of things to be discovered through using different characters in the Grungust in the beginning of Ryusei route and when the combined route comes along. But again, Irm is so good in it and the game kind of has him default into the Grungust, so I think there's a reason for that. Irm is fantastic in this thing, and you're not going wrong with using Irm in it. You're really not going wrong with putting anybody in it. The Grungust is, again, your boss mech, your super robot that is going to stand heads and tails above all of your personal troopers so far, and is going to be an integral part of your team right now and towards the very end of the game because of its incredible high damage output that only other supers and some very specific other cases can even come close to matching. So now that we have the Hyper Fighter, you still can't let Irm die. That's a pretty tall order, unless you explicitly put the Grungust in the most dangerous situation possible. It's pretty much going to be able to tank any attack from these coming enemies. For right now, you're best to keep the Grungust in its base form and pop a bullseye and just go to town on all the enemies and try to take out as many as possible. Get Irm's will up in case you want to try and take out Elzam later on.
DC の好きにやらせるわけにはいかねえからな。こいつでぶっ飛ばしてやるぜ。
ここまでか。脱出だ。
抵抗するな。親父のやついい仕事してるぜ。因果応報ってね。帝都星と羅合星のコンボ受けてもらうぜ。
必ず戻ってくるぞ。
So first we'll set up another cheer kill for Ingram. I'm electing not to go for the Elzam kill. With enough upgrades in a Cybuster and with maybe a really well-trained Irm, it may be possible to take him out, but getting the SR point in time isn't going to be easy if you do try to go for it, and the reward isn't exactly amazing, so you're probably best to hold off. But like I said earlier, you will get more opportunities to get back at Elzam.
大義名分だけで勝てると思うなよ。
スパイラルアタ
アクティブ目標位置最終確認終了。
7番発射。
強い攻撃手が揃っているようだな。
So as you saw there with my attempt with the Hagane, you're just not going to be dealing a lot of damage. Elzam will like to defend and evade your attacks if they're going to hit, so your chances of dealing a lot of damage and taking him down to the point where you could kill him before he retreats, which I believe he will retreat as well, so it's again very difficult to pull off. I figure while we slowly take down these killer whales, I'll take the opportunity to talk about Irm and the Grungust, because they are a package deal. Irm and the Grungust debuted in Super Robot Wars 4. Irm was one of the few selectable characters that were the main characters for that game. I believe that was the first game that had it so that you could select your main character, a feature that Super Robot Wars kept for many years. You also got to select your own mech, and one of those mechs could have been the Grungust. You also got to choose its color, and so it was a pretty cool system in the 4th Super Robot Wars, which was the final Super Robot Wars, I believe, on the SNES.
今さら慌てても遅いぜ。ドリルアタック。突撃だと避難。
しっかり頼むにゃ。
ああ、わかったぜ。アカシックバスター。おりゃ。沈むにはまだ早い。
This design and personality of Irm is far closer to the design and personality of Irm from Super Robot Wars Alpha and the rest of the Alpha series as well. This is true for the SRX team as well. A lot of the plot for Super Robot Wars Original Generations 1 mirrors Alpha 1 as well, so that's why there's a lot of parallels, a lot of similar characters, and a lot of same story beats if you've ever played or seen Alpha. But sorry, I don't have a lot to say for this map again, guys. It's just a very simple map, especially because all you're doing is taking out really low-level enemies. These killer whales are only a pain in the butt because of the fact that they have lots of HP and defense, and so you can easily take them out. I probably should have set up the kill for Ingram. I'm going to have Rai take him out on enemy phase, but yeah, that's about all I have for this scenario. It's very easy, and you don't have to think much about it. Again, you could take out Elzam and still get the SR point, but again, there's going to be a lot of preparation and playing the game in a very specific way to pull that off. You're probably not going to be able to do it on a first game playthrough, but maybe on a New Game Plus, or if you're, again, really prepared for it.